Is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 a good game? Well, in today's video, we're going to try to answer that question using the experience I gathered during the open beta, of which I played the entire time, as well as community feedback and just some trending topics and looking at the pros and cons of the game in its current state. But before we do that, I'd like to do a big shout out to the Noti Gang. If you'd like to be featured in the next Noti Gang shout out, make sure to like the video, subscribe, ring the bell, and comment Noti Gang below. To kick things off, I thought we'd start with what I thought was good from the beta, and the number one is going to be visuals. I thought that this game was visually stunning. Everything from the environmental texture details to just the way that the water looks on the ground. The guns especially give off this very Black Ops feel. A big issue I had with Vanguard was everything kind of felt thin. It didn't really feel thick. Same thing kind of with Cold War, almost cartoony. Well, Infinity Ward and Modern Warfare games have always delivered a beautiful game, and that you're going to get more of the same if the actual game on launch looks anything like this beta, which tends to be the case. It looks great. The explosions look fantastic. And just the character models in and of themselves, they look thick, for lack of a better term. Everything feels fully fleshed out, and it's just a good experience visually speaking. As you go from game mode to game mode, I was very impressed with how this game looks visually. The second pro I have on my list is going to be audio. I know that there's been a lot of discussion in the community about footstep audio, which we're going to get to later on in this video. But overall, I think the audio belongs in the pros section. I enjoy the way that the guns sound when you're shooting them. I even enjoy the way footsteps sound in general, not discussing specifically the level of volume that they might bring, but the audio in and of itself is something that this community has asked for years. Something in the way of being able to dissect certain audio tracks in your headset from characters as they move, shoot, and it's something that not a lot of games have been able to really execute properly. And I think that Activision and its studios successfully integrated a robust audio system within Modern Warfare 2, and I couldn't be happier about that. Number 3 on the pros list is gonna be Killstreaks. I really enjoy the way that Killstreaks played in this multiplayer beta, especially the cruise missile feels so much fun to track down enemies. And even if it's not the best kill streak, I probably had the most fun calling that one in. I thought that the little iPad system that they've used before is just so well integrated into the game, and you really just feel like you're the one calling it down. I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but it's very realistic. It's very cool. They have a little bit of work to do, I think, on the chopper gunner. That may not be moving and operating as intended, but otherwise, the kill streak system in this game is just an absolute blast to use, and I think that they knocked it out of the park. The next thing I thought was great in Modern Warfare 2 was the game modes. They surprisingly had a lot of game modes for us to try and play in the beta, and it was really, really fun. The quick play even had a little system that let you select and toggle whether or not you wanted to play domination or TDM, which I thought was great because I always feel like dominations is a little bit campy on the lanes, especially on certain maps. So a lot of the times my team and my squad would toggle and just play TDM, and then sometimes if we wanted to get higher kills, we would toggle that on to domination. So I thought that was great, and I love hardpoint. Hardpoint is where you're going to get the most kills. So as a YouTuber myself, I would love to drop into hardpoint and kind of get a higher kill game as footage to showcase a gun. Really enjoyed that. Honestly, I wasn't crazy about ground war personally. I know a lot of people in the community actually really enjoyed the ground war system that they have in place right now. But I would like to get into a con a little bit later about why I didn't enjoy ground war, so I'm not going to spoil that now. Of course, S&D is a ton of fun. Getting a little toxic in the post game is great. I even really enjoyed prisoner rescue. I loved that new take, or at least a different take on S&D, and I was surprised that I really enjoyed that. That might be my second favorite game mode in this beta. And my third favorite game mode, and it's one that I wanted to show a little bit here in this footage, is the third person mode. I didn't know how I was going to feel about third person mode. I heard a lot of people in the community saying that ADSing from third person was jarring and that they did not enjoy it. Me personally, I did not have that experience. I really, really, really liked the third person game mode. It lets you three-peek corners, and with a shotgun or even an MP5 hip firing, it is so much fun to experience Call of Duty in a way that we haven't been able to in many COD titles. This gives you those old school Gears of War vibes if you guys are old like me. I could not believe how much I enjoyed that game mode. That was one I didn't think that it was going to be on the pros list. I definitely enjoyed third person mode, and I think that they did a great job on the current game modes that we're able to play in the beta. And finally, the fifth pro of the Modern Warfare 2 beta is going to be the maps. I thought overall the maps were a huge W. They have personality, which is something I thought maybe was lacking a little bit in like Vanguard or even Cold War. And that's just hit or miss. I don't blame Activision for not necessarily making the greatest multiplayer maps in the recent past, and that's just a personal thing, personal preference. I love the way that the maps feel, the way that the maps look, and they're for the most part very symmetrical. There's not a whole lot of spots for people to just post up and camp that you couldn't just post up and camp on any regular multiplayer map. A lot of them don't lend themselves to that, with the exception of one map that I wasn't crazy about, which was Museum. I didn't particularly care for that map, but outside of that map, I thought the rest were just an absolute ball to play on. And you can't really blame the map if people decide not to move into camp. There's a con we're going to get to that is going to promote that. That's not the map's fault. I thought the maps in and of themselves were great. They were fleshed out really well. They look really good. The lanes were really solid. And I already was getting excited when I would see certain maps. Farm in particular was one of my favorite. And I know just for the lack of me remembering the name of the map with the little bar area in the middle. The visuals were great. It was easy to see people in most corners, and I just thought that they had a lot of personalities. The maps overall, I think, are a huge win in Modern Warfare 2. Now that we've talked about what I like about the beta, it's time to transition and start looking at things that maybe I didn't like as much, or that has been trending in the community that maybe people haven't been loving as much of in the Modern Warfare 2 beta. Our first con on the list is going to be skill-based matchmaking. Now, while personally I didn't experience it as bad as maybe some other players, my average KD in Warzone is about a 1.7, but there are some absolute demons out there in the world who have a much, much higher KD and are probably a lot better than me, and I can imagine that their lobbies haven't been as fun. They implemented a full a robust skill-based matchmaking system even in the beta, which a lot of people in the community were resounding about that, how that was not a fun time for them. You know, the beta is supposed to be about testing and looking at bugs. They're like, you're already showing the community what it's going to be like in quick play when the game comes out. So a lot of people have been very vocal about wanting a ranked system on one hand and having just a regular casual system without skill-based matchmaking. So ranked mode would have skill-based, casual quick play would not have skill-based. That's been a request for a long time. I think Fortnite may have implemented it, and it's very popular. I don't know if they're going to be doing that. They have not mentioned it at all. I don't think Activision really has ever addressed skill-based matchmaking, because I know that it caters to the vast majority of the audience, the casual player, the players with, families, or their kids and in school. Like the skill-based works for most people. But with that said, overall, I do think it's a con. I think that having it separated with a rank system and casual system would be an improvement in the game. Piggybacking off of our first point, the second con, which I do feel is definitely a negative, is going to be catering to casuals and just overall neutering a lot of the aspects of Call of Duty that we've come to know. This is much more of, I guess, a controversial topic. This has definitely split the community a little bit. In particular, removing red dots from the minimap and the footstep audio being too loud. I'm going to give you my take on it, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about what has been trending in the community. In terms of the red dot removal, I don't hate it as much as probably your average, a hardcore player or like really sweaty player. To be honest, the reason is because I'm primarily going to be playing Warzone, and in Warzone, most of the time, players are gonna, even in this Warzone 2 where there's no loadout boxes, people are gonna be buying their loadout guns from the buy station, which is a mechanic, and they're gonna be, they would be suppressed in like Warzone 1, and then they wouldn't show up on the radar. I'm gonna count on my UAVs to show me where enemies are at. And I'm not much of a multiplayer person, so that doesn't affect me as much, but I definitely do see how a multiplayer main or even somebody looking forward to DMZ would say, hey, this isn't going to make anybody incentivize many people to be aggressive. So I get it. I absolutely understand the feedback on that. I guess I just don't have as strong of an opinion about the red dot removal, and that kind of goes right into the next one, which is the footstep audio. Being able to hear the exact location of players in your headset pretty much at all times. I feel a little bit more passionate about this one. I do think it's a bit much because it's so loud and it's so separated from the rest of the in-game audio. Something that a lot of players I just haven't heard it talked about as much. It's one thing to have high footstep fidelity in the game. It's another thing that it almost makes every other audio duck underneath it. And if you're an audio head or an audio file out there, you know exactly what that means. It basically is just by far the loudest thing that's going on, like much louder than a gunshot or any other kind of audio in the game. It's going to let you know for sure where that someone's at and where they're coming from. As an aggressive player in Warzone and Rebirth, traditionally, I could see how this is going to hinder that aggressiveness that I'm going to be able to do, making it more and more difficult to sneak up on teams that are camping in a location. One of them is going to have a good enough headset, and they're all going to be looking, at the door where I'm about to try to push them while they're camping. So I don't like the footstep audio as much, and of course the community is exactly the same with that. It's been a very divisive conversation just about, hey, I know we wanted better footstep audio, but this is too much. So I think maybe toning that down might be a good middle ground for people, but that's going to be in the cons list for me. Our next con is going to be Gunsmith /UI, which I just decided to kind of roll the UI into this con because it feels like it's kind of the same thing. We're going to have Gunsmith footage on your screen, just kind of showing some of the wonky behavior of going in and out of guns and how you can easily accidentally equip something without attachments. And then currently there's no way to save your loadout, so it's very frustrating, as well as the perk system that's counterintuitive. Doesn't really it just kind of is unnecessary amount of like clicks and screens to navigate through to get anything done, but also just the overall UI in the game doesn't feel incredibly streamlined. It doesn't feel incredibly intuitive, and to boot, I know it's a beta, but there wasn't any kind of tooltip to help players out or to help out with exactly how to navigate that. And I would wager there's at least one screen in that game that nobody really knows how to utilize because the lack of on-screen tutorial, which I think would have helped a lot of players out. So with the Gunsmith in particular, there just seems to be a lot of attachments in certain areas, specifically the muzzle, which I think I put on screen a second ago. And just the speed of which to navigate them, even on keyboard and mouse, just feels too long. It feels like it's too much. I think that there's probably a better way to display every attachment or to display and to navigate through all of this, that it just feels like it's a bit slow right now. And I would imagine that they're probably going to do a little bit more work on the UI, but more or less this is going to be the system that we get. It's a lot. UI in and of itself is a big coded function in any video game, and they're just too close to launch with everything else they have to do to completely overhaul the UI. So I can imagine this is probably going to be a con when the game launches. I don't think that everyone's going to love the UI exactly, and they're probably going to have some complaints about the Gunsmith. What I will say about this is that I do think that this is something that they can work on over time. I heard rumors, don't quote me on this, but I heard rumors that they brought people on from Hulu to help them with their UI. And if you think about it, the UI kind of looks like a Hulu streaming service or a Netflix streaming service with the way that the squares and buttons are. So I don't know. The Gunsmith isn't my favorite. I'm not crazy like I'm not like rabid about this con. I just don't think it's good. And that's how I feel about the UI as well, but I think it could be in the future. Now for my last con, I don't know how everyone feels about this, but this is definitely my personal experience. I do not like the way that vehicles drive in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. And what am I getting this from? It's from that invasion that I mentioned earlier, that ground war that I didn't particularly enjoy. Well, the reason I went to ground war was to try the vehicles. If you know anything about me or my content, I love vehicles on live stream. I love driving with my friends. I love getting them killed in funny ways. And if you follow my content, my short form especially, you know that I use vehicles to troll people in various manners. Well, these vehicles look and sound like Modern Warfare vehicles, which is awesome, but they drive like Vanguard. It feels like there's input delay when you turn left and right and stop and brake and go. And there's like a second where it doesn't move. It doesn't do anything. I don't know why that's like that. I don't know why Vanguard vehicles were like that. In the realm of realism, if you turn handlebars, stuff turns. I don't know why they did this. I hope that this is just a placeholder for another system, but with 2 months for 1 month until the game, less than 1 month until the game launches, it feels like that's probably what we're going to get out of the box, which is a little disappointing to me because I love vehicles, and I truly hope I'm wrong, and I hope that the vehicles drive in a more cohesive manner that does not have input lag. But I definitely feel passionate about this one. I hope Activision, if you're listening, which you're probably not, please make your vehicles easier to drive. And that's just going to be a big old con for me. So what do I rate Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 after playing the beta for 4 days straight like an absolute nerd? I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Now, you might be thinking, Josh, that seems kind of high after all those cons you just listed. Well, here's the deal. Those pros are such pros for me that I don't think that those cons come close to outweighing them. In fact, I'm much more of a Warzone player, and if you look at some of those cons, I don't think that they're as impactful in Warzone. Gunsmith, the UI, could care less. Once I'm in the game, who cares about the UI? The most important thing is, how does the game play? How does it feel? Do I like what I'm seeing when I'm playing the game? And most of those questions are going to be yes, I do enjoy this. The biggest one, which I'm not going to include here because it's not relevant, is Al Mazrah. When we see that map, that Battle Royale map, every single person that has played on it has said that the map is beautiful. And what you can do is you can patch a lot of these cons, if not all of these cons. What you cannot do is you cannot switch the maps. We saw this with Caldera. Everyone hated Caldera. They did everything in the world under the sun to make the experience better, from deployable balloons, perks on the ground, etc. And it didn't make up for the fact that the map sucks. You cannot remake a map once the game is launched. So that's the most important thing. And from what everyone has seen and what they've played and what I've seen, I think the map's going to be a huge W. I think the gameplay is incredible. I think the killstreaks are incredible. I think the maps and the POIs are incredible. I think the audio is more of a pro than a con, personally. And if you do think that some of these things are cons, guess what? They have the ability to fix them. And even if they're not fixed, it's not going to outweigh what this game has the potential to be, which we don't know because it hasn't released yet. So as you can tell, I am excited. I'm very excited for this game to come out. I hope that this is the future of Call of Duty, that I truly think it can be. And if it's not perfect out of the box, they got 2 years to fix it. So we're going to let optimism take the wheel here. And hopefully, speaking of wheel, get those vehicles together a little bit for your boy. Okay, Activision, I beg you. Okay, anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.